What? What is this?
So slow to catch on.
Look at those monsters!
Relax, beautiful.
Hello and welcome to the Typewriter Sessions. I'm your host Brett, and with me is my co-host and one of my oldest friends, Claire.
Hi everybody.
And of course, what an apt name for a Resident Evil podcast. Maybe I should have been called Jill, or why did I go with Jill? Why won't I go with Chris? Or
I think you're more of a Barry.
Oh, what? No, I'm not that stupid. You know, like making bad. No, I do make bad jokes. That's probably right, actually. So yeah, here we go. This is episode 1, and we are going to be covering Resident Evil, the OG. So yeah, I mean, why a podcast on Resident Evil? I mean, obviously you know Claire because I told you, but we have always talked about Resident Evil. We're old friends, and pretty much all we ever talk about is Resident Evil. And my wife Charlotte one day just asked who I was messaging because I was laughing like I usually am when I'm messaging Claire about Resident Evil, and she said, "You're just always talking about Resident Evil. Why don't you just do a podcast?" And I was just like, well, that's not a bad idea actually. So I asked you, didn't I? And then you was a bit like, I don't know about that. But here we are, we're going to give it a go, and we're just going to sort of pretty much cover Resident Evil from start to finish in terms of releases of games and then everything in between. So, I don't really want to, but we're going to cover games, movies. Movies. I mean,
they weren't right though, were they?
No, they wasn't. I mean, they weren't even Resident Evil. The only thing that they had in common with the games is that they had the same name. It was just they're not Resident Evil. But then, welcome to Raccoon City.
You know what? I didn't actually mind that.
No,
I did not actually mind that, and I like that it had that original Resident Evil feel with the original characters, and the mansion was done okay-ish. Obviously, they only scratched the surface with that.
Well,
it was a more palatable.
Yes, at least
version.
It felt more Resident Evil than the others. Interesting concept to merge 1 and 2, and then then there's the Netflix series. Did you ever watch that?
I haven't watched that.
No, I won't.
No.
I won't. But maybe for the sake of the podcast, one day I will, so we can do a episode on it. Why do I do these things to myself? And then, yeah, we'll cover absolutely everything. And hopefully, if you are a fan of Resident Evil, the chances are you're not really going to learn a massive amount of stuff. But what we want to do is we want to try and give you the most amount of coverage about the games, its development, absolutely everything, and then that way it's all in one place. I mean, you can learn this stuff out there, but a lot of it's fragmented, it's all over the place. So the idea is that this is going to be one place where you can learn absolutely everything about each subject, and then that's it. And I've done my best to try and cover as much as I can. I will acknowledge our sources, but I'm going to do that at the end of the subject because there's a few and it's quite extensive. But anyway, so with that, let's crack on with the whole reason why we're here, and that is Resident Evil 1996. So as I said previously, if you're here, you're probably a fan and you already know a lot of this anyway. But in keeping with the format, for future episodes on maybe some of the more obscure releases, which some might not be familiar with, we're going to begin the episode with the introduction of what we're actually talking about. So, Resident Evil, or Biohazard as it's known in Japan, was a third-person survival horror game released in 1996 for the Sony PlayStation by Japanese video game developer Capcom and by its games director Shinji Mikami. Now, I am just going to have to say right here, there's a lot of Japanese names in this, and I am really going to struggle to get these right. So if I'm pronouncing it wrong,
Well, I won't know.
well, that's it. I mean, at least someone will just nod and agree. But I know that if people do listen to this, they're probably going to be like, what an absolute fucking moron. He's just like absolutely butchering these names. So if I do say it wrong, I am sorry. But they can be quite difficult. And I'm not trying to be offensive when I say that. But if I am being offensive, then I'm sorry. So anyway, the game set in the fictional American city of Raccoon City told the story of members of STAR's Alpha Team, a special branch of the Raccoon City Police Department, searching the woods to look for their missing comrades of Bravo Team who disappeared whilst investigating a string of bizarre murders. During Alpha Team's investigation, the team are attacked and they retreat into a nearby mansion for safety, with very little options, but they begin investigating the area to find their missing... yeah, the hand. No! Don't go! Brilliant. With very little options, they begin investigating the area to find their missing Bravo team comrades and, of course, a way out. But as they begin their investigation, they soon discover this is no ordinary mansion. Wow! What a mansion!
Gotta get that one.
Gotta get it in there. When they come face to face with zombies and bizarre mutated creatures. Players were given a choice of two protagonists, Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield, each with its own unique story and endings, including their own supporting characters. Each character would also have their own abilities and items specific to their scenario. The game was an immediate hit, captivating its gamer audience with its blend of live action sequences, for better or worse I guess, 3D characters and environments, cinematic storytelling and its rich story setting and enemies. The game also featured a level of gore not really seen to this degree in a game before, which also garnered it a lot of attention. It was not expected that Resident Evil would go on to become a worldwide phenomenon, which would lead to a number of sequels, one of which will be released next year to coincide with the franchise's 30th anniversary. As previously mentioned, it would also go on to spawn a number of spin-off titles, comics, live-action movies, animated movies, which some are better than others, books, action figures, a TV series, which I'm sure is terrible, and a whole lot of memorabilia. But what is it about Resident Evil that made it so special? How did a B-grade horror movie inspired video game come to be, and how did it become one of the most loved and celebrated video game franchises of all time? This story begins in 1993 when a Capcom development team under the name Team Horror, great name, I mean,
Team Horror
just does exactly what it says on the tin, doesn't it, really? Was looking to develop a new horror game. Takuro Fujiwara,
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I did all right there. Was the producer of the project, and he was looking to achieve a level of horror he had been able to capture before when he worked on a previous video game project. Fujiwara's resume at this point in his career was mostly made up of directing the majority of Mega Man titles on the NES. But, most importantly, certainly in relation to this subject, he was the director of a title which would soon be his main influence behind the development of Resident Evil. Shinji Mikami was brought on board as director to help Fujiwara realise this vision, which was an interesting choice given Mikami's resume of mostly working on Disney video game adaptations.
Wow.
Which is weird, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, like, you go on making games about fucking Donald Duck and what have you, and then it's like, oh yeah,
I like those games, though.
Donald Duck.
Yeah,
He was a Razzie bastard, wasn't he? Yeah. You know he would have loved seeing Barry be a buffoon because he could have just shouted at him. I wish I could do a Donald Duck impression now. No, I'm not going to because I can't. So, as the game's development progressed, the team expanded, bringing in more and more resources and additional talent to help realise this horror masterpiece. Just as so many great things take inspiration and are influenced by something, Resident Evil is no exception. Now, although Resident Evil has a few inspirations to draw from, which we will try and cover as many as we are aware of, but first of all, we must discuss the game's most profound inspiration and influence, and this would be the video game Sweet Home. This is regarded as one of the major, if not the sole contributor to the genesis of Resident Evil, and as you will soon find out, it's easy to understand why. To understand the importance of Sweet Home and its importance on the conception of Resident Evil, we must understand what this game was. So, for those not familiar with the game, do you know what?
I've not heard of Sweet Home, so you'll have to educate me.
I will. So, Sweet Home was an RPG, so those not familiar, role-playing game. developed and released solely in Japan on the NES, so that's the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, we never got Sweet Home because, well, I'll explain in a sec, but it was directed by Fujiwara, so Takura Fujiwara, who was the producer of Resident Evil, was the director of that game, and it was this game that he actually wanted to revisit. He loved this game, and he was very proud of it, and it was actually quite a big hit as well. So, and he wanted to revisit it and make it scarier and develop it into the kind of game he always envisioned. Something that the NES just simply couldn't deliver due to the console's technical limitations. That being said, Sweet Home was actually highly praised, which is somewhat surprising in the sense it was actually a video game adaptation of a Japanese horror film of the same name. The film was released the same year and told the story of a film crew who visit an old abandoned mansion in search of some paintings, or more specifically, frescoes.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, they go looking for some frescoes. Left by the mansion's famous artist owner. The intention of the crew is to retrieve the paintings, restore them, and document this journey for their film. However, upon arrival, the film crew are subject to paranormal phenomena ranging from poltergeist activity to possession, and to top it all off, the spirit of the lady of the house doing their utmost to kill any who dare enter the mansion.
Wow.
Now, in relation to the game, although on the surface some of the similarities and inspirations are blatantly obvious, such as the mansion setting, the door opening scene at the beginning of the game actually serves as the inspiration for the room transition loading screens, the doors. So that actually happens at the start of Sweet Home, and they used that for the door opening scenes. And the fact that both games end in a similar fashion. Spoiler alert, in Sweet Home, after reuniting the lady of the house with her dead son, the mansion collapses and is destroyed. Where obviously, if you're playing this, watching, listening, whatever, to this, then you know that the Resident Evil mansion done.
But do they find the frescoes?
Good question. I'll find that out for
for
episode 2, because yeah, we do need closure on that. You're right.
When we're saying frescoes, are these attached to the building? Would they have to I'm thinking like mosaics. You'd have to rip them off the.
So they're actually just doing criminal damage as well now.
Because I'm not thinking like paintings you can just remove.
You can.
With a fresco, I'm thinking like a mural. I mean.
Yeah, you're right.
Are we going to remove them from the mansion?
Crowbars.
Sorry,
No, because now I want to know. But I will find out, because to find that out, I would have to research the film, which is fine. I don't mind doing that. But I didn't really think I was going to get asked that question.
Yeah, you are doing a podcast with me. So
Yeah. I need everything, don't I?
Random.
Wow, I'm going. My research is going to have to be more extensive.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's not enough that I did it all. Never mind.
I'm just here to make your life hell.
Yeah, more difficult. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So, but anyhow, these are not the extent of the similarities and inspiration. So, Sweet Home was a top-down role-playing game which features many of the gameplay elements, styles and mechanics that any Resident Evil game is famous for. These come in the form of crazy item management, backtracking through previously explored areas to access rooms previously inaccessible, revisiting puzzles which were unable to be completed, multiple endings depending on decisions you've made along the way, characters integral to the story who may die or be killed throughout your play depending on your choices, notes to read which help further pack out the story and lore, characters having their own unique special items such as a lighter, maybe it's Chris, or a lockpick, the master of unlocking, a camera and others, and of course, finally, the monsters! So, as previously mentioned, Fujiwara had intended the project, which would go on to become Resident Evil, to be a spiritual successor / remake of Sweet Home, of sorts. And the game was originally developed to be released on the SNES, so the Super Nintendo. But in Japan it was called the Famicom, so the Super Famicom, if we're gonna, be very finite on the details or whatever. But after a prolonged period of pre-development and much of the development being hampered by the capabilities and power limitations of the Super Nintendo, development eventually shifted to the next platform, which was the PlayStation. It was during pre-development that it was also recognised by Capcom the need to move the game away from an RPG format, which weren't typically very popular in the West at that time, which is crazy considering the success of Final Fantasy VII.
Right, yeah.
Because that was only released a year after Resident Evil. So it's crazy that how much they changed their mind, I think.
Yeah.
You know, like, so during pre-development, I mean, I know this, we're talking maybe 93, 94 when they were making these decisions. And, you know, like, Final Fantasy would have been released in 97, but it's crazy, like, they've just thought, oh, yeah, we'll release Final Fantasy VII over in the West, why not? And it was massive, wasn't it? And it's Final Fantasy now, it's, you know, it's another one of those, bit like Resident Evil, where it's just massive. But, yeah, crazy that they said, no, we're not going to do a RPG at that time. I think it's really strange. Because of Sweet Home's impression and influence behind the development of Resident Evil, it was also originally going to be a game which featured ghosts instead of zombies. Now, this idea was ultimately scrapped in early development, so we have no idea what this would have meant for the game and how it would have looked. But it is interesting to note that an early build of Resident Evil 4 saw Leon in a castle, seemingly grappling with paranormal entities, and a trailer actually can be found on YouTube, an early trailer of a pre-build of Resident Evil 4, and you can find that on YouTube, yeah, and it's worth a look.
How does he grapple with a ghost?
Shoots them. How else are you gonna
go through them?
Well, it's not really a ghost. It's hard to explain. When you watch the trailer, they look almost like ghosts, but they're not. I really can't.
Well, it doesn't matter, because Leon is capable of just kicking ass in it anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the ghosts or whatever.
Exactly.
He's the man to do it.
He is. And can you just keep your hands where I can see them, please? So,
That's a load of turn, didn't you?
always. But yeah, I mean, Leon fighting ghosts. I'd be down with seeing that. I'd be down with seeing Leon fight a ghost.
Yeah.
Trying to suplex a ghost.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
That would, yeah.
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 I think that'd be fun. So, yeah, so if you're not aware of it, go look for it. Resident Evil 4 pre-trailer, I can't remember what I searched for to find it, but it's an interesting watch. Anyway, so coming back to early development for Resident Evil, however, it must also be said that although the inspiration for the game was clear, it's not only Sweet Home we have to thank for the game reaching its final product, the one we all know. At one point, the original pitch was to be from a first-person perspective, but limitations at the time yet again forced the direction of the game in a different direction. And let's not forget that once again, early development plans for Resident Evil served as an inspiration for another future release, which was Resident Evil Survivor. Now, that's terrible, but it did have its own set of sequels and whatever, but I think most importantly, though, the biggest first-person games in the Resident Evil have got to be 7, 8, and the upcoming 9, Yeah. But if you think that eventually we did see first-person Resident Evil games, it's quite interesting that that's originally how they wanted it to be as well. So, with the first-person perspective needing to be scrapped due to development limitations yet again, so they started looking for another way, and at this point, Shinji Mikami discovered a game, and this game is deemed by many to be the original third-person survival horror game, and that's Alone in the Dark.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Yeah.
With its third-person perspective, fixed camera angles, and pre-rendered backgrounds and environments, it was the perfect choice for advancing the game's development. Alone in the Dark also featured many of the same traits Resident Evil would become known and famous for, such as puzzle-solving, fighting monsters, a labyrinthine setting, and different playable characters with multiple ending. It's with this discovery and influence the game's development really leapt forward, certainly in terms of what kind of game would actually end up being played. Many other inspirations and factors would continue to filter in and to what would be the finished version of the game, and many of those inspirations came from movies. Now, we are probably going to jump the timeline a little here for some of these inspirations, but I think it would be just best if we just talked about all of them now and we just sort of cover it all. But the obvious ones, which don't really need much explanation, are Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Kind of see it, but I'm not really sure about that one. And the Italian horror movie Zombie. and its sequel are some of the more obvious influences on Resident Evil, and I really don't think I need to insult anyone's intelligence by explaining those. It is said Mikami was especially disappointed with Zombie 2 when he saw it, and he hoped he could try and capture something with Resident Evil, which he never got from that film. Like, he was hoping to sort of like almost like redeem it for himself, because he had such a bad experience watching it, because he thought it was absolutely terrible. So he was like, well, I can do better than that. It's just shit, whatever. So, but it was his general love for the zombie horror genre, which was a huge push toward Mikami's direction for the game. But other than those inspirations, I think it'd be remiss not to make note of some of the other references and influences, which have not been cited, but certainly pop up through the course of the game. It is unknown whether these influences and their citation omission has been done purposely or accidentally by those involved in the game's direction, but we can discuss some of these seemingly obvious influences, and you, the listeners, and you, Claire, of course, can let us know if you agree, or maybe you can tell us whether or not these have actually been acknowledged as inspiration or not, because as of my research, the vast majority of these don't seem to have any sort of official acknowledgement by anyone involved in the production of the original Resident Evil. So yeah, if you can help us out with that, that'd be great. But firstly, the infected crow enemies, and specifically the crow room with the painting puzzles, has to be influenced by Alfred Hitchcock's movie The Birds.
Yeah.
I would say so anyway.
And I love the atmosphere in that.
Yeah.
You just hear them calling, and
there's no music in there either, is there?
And then the music when the painting
drops.
And
yeah.
You're like, oh my god, are they going to start flying at me and pecking my eyes out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Usual concerns for crows. Yeah, but you know what though, right? I can't hear a crow now without thinking that I am going to get pecked to death because of Resident Evil.
Standard.
When you get crows like sat on the roof and everything, and you can hear them squawking. I'm just like.
I mean, I love crows. I've got
they're awesome.
Tattoos of crows.
Yes, you have.
I love crows.
No, they're awesome.
But yeah, even the paintings they put in that puzzle are just so creepy and really atmospheric. I love that part of the game. That's one of my.
Well, when I replayed it for my YouTube channel, like I loved being in that room again doing that puzzle. That's like one of those early puzzles that you did where you was like, oh, I'm really solving something here, and the atmosphere and everything with the birds just watching over you.
The only problem is I could tell you had a bit of a crisis when you were doing it, because you realise that you're like the middle-aged man painting now, and when you first played you would have been like, what is it, the young boy?
The lively young boy.
Lively young boy, and all the lights died in your eyes.
And now I'm the tired middle-aged.
Tired middle-aged woman for me, but yeah.
Yeah, but you don't look it. I look like the tired middle-aged man.
Botox, Brett.
Yeah, maybe I need to just sort of have a bit of a spruce up, maybe get some. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, you're right. I did have a bit of a crisis then. There was a hit of like, damn. My picture's quite far on in the puzzle now. It's not one of the first pictures anymore. Damn, I'm gonna be that fucking white bearded man at the end.
I thought he looked like Santa, but
does
I don't
look like Santa.
looking at it right.
No, I think he does. He does look like Santa.
Like Santa.
Does. Like he's sort of like looking over his little gold rimmed glasses.
The glasses in
yeah. Miracle on 31st Street or whatever it's called.
What?
30, is it 31st? Or 34th? 34th. 31st. A cheap knockoff.
T-move.
Sheen Santa. Oh dear. Anywho, so another one would be the sharks pursuing Jill or Chris in the water room. Is similar to the shark reveal in.
I love that. Now again, that is another part of the game I absolutely love.
Mm-hmm.
And the music in that is really like.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, it proper stresses me out.
Yeah, there is a vibe to it, isn't there? Yeah, it definitely is. I think that for a game like that, the music was spot on, wasn't it? It was so atmospheric, and
it is now. Like even though it's obviously 30 years old, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When you replayed it again for your YouTube channel, I still felt like those feelings I got when I first played it. Like, feeling really nervous, worried about what's behind the door loading screen, and it's still the music.
It's spot on. I mean, and the thing is, when just touching on that again, like when I did play it, I was surprised how much I remembered, but how much I had also forgotten, because I absolutely hammered it when I first played it. But then I was still like shitting myself about like confronting certain enemies, hunters especially.
Oh, they're awful.
I hate the hunters.
They're really difficult, aren't
yeah,
they?
Yeah, and we will talk about that later as well. But honestly, the hunters are the worst, and they're just so fast and unpredictable. And anyway, honestly, they're just the worst. But the sharks, they weren't really much of a threat. You just had to run. But if you didn't know where you were going, then you would burned.
Cinematic bit where
it was like
showed you going through the water. I'm sorry I subjected everybody to my little rendition of the song.
No, that was awesome. It sounded just like it. I actually thought I'd left it on somewhere. But and then the typewriters as a save function would appear to be a nod to The Shining.
Yes.
It has been discussed by Mikami and those attached to the project that the mansion's labyrinthine setting was also inspired by the Overlook Hotel from the story, and many of the pre-rendered backgrounds of the mansion's rooms were also inspired by the hotel in the film. So it kind of makes sense that they would use typewriters if they were inspired by the film in the first place. So, which is pretty cool. There are also some other interesting influences which have absolutely blown me away. And when I saw them, I was just like, what the fuck? It's like, they're just too hard to ignore. But these apparent influences have never been confirmed in any kind of way. So, pardon the pun, and the pun, which will make more sense in a moment, you can be the judge. The influences I'm talking about appear to be found in the similarities between certain elements of Resident Evil 1996 and the movie Judge Dredd, starring Sylvester I Am the Law Stallone, right? Now, we aren't here to discuss whether or not that was a good film, because it was fucking terrible, but there are some shockingly scary similarities between the film and the game's climax scenes with regards to Resident Evil. We're specifically talking about its scenes with Wesker unveiling the tyrant to Jill or Chris. Oh, right, okay. I've got some pictures that I'm going to bring up in a minute. So, these scenes are of the tyrant, the main boss enemy of the game, in its glass cylindrical container, and the hero character being forced to lock on at the abomination within. When compared with these scenes from Judge Dredd, which I'm going to show you now, right? Hold on, let me just... I can't wait to show you this. I swear, I've been looking forward to this so much, because I just know you've never seen this, right? Oh my god. Right, look at this.
Oh my god, yes! Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'll find a way to try and get these pictures either with links or whatever into the description of this podcast. But that is just crazy. And another interesting thing to point out, which has not been confirmed and quite frankly somewhat denied, is a scene in the film which, when we compare it to a certain game's box art, which is here, Claire.
Yes, the original.
Yes.
Box art.
Yes. You don't need to pour your eyes over that too much. You remember what that looks like.
Yeah,
so it looks suspiciously... Well, I mean, we're made to believe that that's Chris Redfield. Okay? That's what we're made to believe, isn't it?
We are, yeah. He looks very disturbed on it.
He does. He looks...
not surprising, considering
the circumstances. Yeah. But then, take a look at... Bear with me. I do...
No, I have heard.
Have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. I mean, most people probably have, but I mean, I think it's crazy. Now, the artist behind this has taken to his Twitter in the past when asked about this, and he said this. I'm just going to get his Twitter feed up. Here we go. So, this is a quote from his Twitter about this. So, the artist, which is, I think you pronounce it Bill Sienkiewicz, I think. Right, okay. If I've got that wrong, I do apologise. So, this is what he said. The character on the box art isn't based on anyone in reality, such as an actor. He's roughly based on a character from the game. At the time I did the cover, the game's concept was still developing, so I was told to run with it, but include certain elements like spiders, etc. So that's an actual tweet from him. But you can't deny it looks a little, he does, doesn't it?
Rambo-esque.
Rambo-esque. Stallone-esque.
Yeah, it does, but I have heard about that.
Yeah. The resemblance in the pose is somewhat uncanny, and they do say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but when you look at this image and then look at the Resident Evil box art, you could argue it verges on plagiarism, really.
Well, it was the appeal at the time, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the box art is iconic, and I won't change it for anything. It's an image etched in my mind from a time and era when games were really transforming, and it began an obsession for me, which still lives today. But when you see the image and then the box art, it's just like you can't unsee it, can you, really? No. I mean, clearly the movie Judge Dredd left an impression on somebody in production, at least on an aesthetics level, God knows why, but Judge Dredd was released in the States in June 1995, where Resident Evil was released in Japan in March of 1996. Now, I don't know if back then that would have been enough time for somebody to see the film and then use that inspiration in production. I don't know, but if this is just a coincidence, then it's a pretty fucking big one, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But quickly, before I move on, while we are on the topic of Sylvester Stallone and his connection to Resident Evil, in December 1996, Stallone appeared in a movie called Daylight.
Yes.
His character in that film wears an outfit which is suspiciously similar. Where's my iPad gone? It's there. Right. Again, you've obviously seen the film by the reaction.
I've seen Daylight,
Yeah.
I actually quite like Daylight,
Yeah.
I actually quite like that.
Well, I don't like living in your daylight. And where is it? Where's this picture? Right, here we go.
Oh yeah! Wow! Yeah. He's gone for a bit more casual with the
yeah.
shirt underneath.
But like
But
the whole
Oh yeah.
green vest, the collar,
everything, the collar.
It's
Yeah.
So another strange one, really. No, I have no idea if this is just another crazy coincidence. After all, the movie was released after the release of the game by about 9 months, but come on. Is it possible somebody in pre-production saw a trailer or photos in a magazine about the upcoming film, saw the outfit and used it as inspiration for the look of Chris? It is far more likely the movie was an influence to the game rather than vice versa, as filming of the movie would have long been finished before the release of Resident Evil. I guess we'll never know. But yet again, the similarities feel almost, just too much to dismiss or ignore as coincidence. So backtracking to the game's early development, Mikami and his team at Capcom realizing that their project was too big for the Super Nintendo, they now had to try and develop their gaming vision for a 32-bit PlayStation console on a time limit. The PlayStation was still new, and the team at Capcom only had a development console to use for a limited period of time, so the team worked day and night to understand the console's limitations and in turn understand what they were actually able to create for this console. Capcom initially anticipated a pre-development window of anywhere up to 2 years, so like 24 months. 2 years was essentially a worst-case scenario. But this ended up being much longer due to the team spending a number of months, with some saying nearly as long as 6 months, simply testing what the console was capable of and how its limitations could hamper their evolving vision of the game. The original intention of a pre-development time, like a maximum of 24 months, actually became 27 months worth of pre-development. And the extra time was mostly attributed to the developers simply testing the PlayStation's capabilities. Wow. So they were literally doing nothing but just can it can it do this? Can it do that? They weren't even making the game at that point. You know, they were simply just going, what can this console do? And crazy, really. Numerous production angles were tested in an attempt to make the game feel as immersive and as authentic as possible. One of these was the use of motion capture, but these elements pushed the PlayStation's capabilities to and often beyond its limits. So eventually generic animations for the characters were developed. The use of real actors would eventually play a part, though, and this was ultimately very important. There's nothing natural about those movements, is there? What is this? Yeah, just them waving around, often when they're not even talking. And you know, in a way, like the motion capture sort of live action thing with real actors, it did ultimately play a very important part of Shinji Mikami's vision for the game. And
let's face it was great, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
I absolutely adored all those cutscenes. Oh, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like, after you got that live action intro, like, you wanted to see more of the live action. And that was a real reward when you got to the end of the game and you got those live action cutscenes. Yeah. It was like, you know, sometimes I feel like you play a game these days and you complete it and there's no payoff.
Yeah.
But I think back then, you completed Resident Evil. Not only was that an achievement, but the fact that you got rewarded for it, and your reward was those live action scenes.
Yeah.
It's fucking badass.
Oh, it was amazing.
And you couldn't wait to play it again to see what other endings you could get because you wanted to see more of those live action scenes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, you can sort of see why it was important to Mikami to have it included in the game. You know, because he was looking to make a cinematic horror masterpiece, I think, you know, and it's certainly, you know, a cinematic horror masterpiece in the sense of what was capable in games at the time. I mean, those scenes will never make it to a movie in the cinema, but for what was capable at the time, you know, what he was trying to go for, and he was ultimately right to try and go for it as well and get it in there. Other development issues, however, were able to find workarounds, such as the door transitions serving as the method to save memory on loading areas and to hide the loading times between areas. Because, let's face it, I mean, it was iconic. You know, the doors, you always remember those, don't you? And the sort of dread that they
built the tension, didn't they? They built the tension, didn't they? So as much as they were a tool used for, you know, what you just said, I think having something like that in a game for the first time, it kind of, just built the tension. And then sometimes the music would.
Well, the music accompanied, it went exactly, and they served a great purpose on a technical level. But the fact that they played a very key part into the experience of the game, is fucking genius, you know. But you know, can you imagine if they didn't use those, and every time you went from room to room, you had these long black loading screens. The game would feel so disjointed, wouldn't it? You would have just turned it off. You'd be bored and you'd have gone insane. But you know, they really did help to build the tension. You always thought about what was behind the next door, what was waiting for you. Was you prepared to go into the next room? You know, what if there was a frigging boss battle in there and you were just walking through the next room and you didn't even have any idea. But it was all just a little act of smoke and mirrors, and it helped disguise the PlayStation's processing of the game. You know, it meant the game could reset the room, which was obviously integral if you had messed the puzzle up or you was being overwhelmed by enemies. And it also meant the game could close one room and load another and not overwhelm the PlayStation's processing power. So another pitched idea was the use of 3D environments, but the implementation of 3D rooms would have also created significant issues and would have pushed the PlayStation's capabilities to its limits. So the 2D pre-rendered backgrounds became an absolute must, but ended up helping to further create a more realistic aesthetic, which was perfect for its realistic and authentic tense horror setting, because the fact that they were sort of almost like drawn in a way, you know, they kind of looked, well, for us back then, they almost looked real, didn't they? You know, like they were really like sort of well drawn and everything, wasn't they? With the switching of the camera angles to help with the manoeuvring of the rooms, a cap of 8 perspectives per room was placed. Now, they didn't all have that, but larger spaces, such as the main hall, were divided into the ground floor and the first floor flaw, so it didn't exceed the camera angle cap. The fixed camera perspective ultimately helped and worked to their favour, driving the desired tense and cinematic feel of the game. Fixed camera perspectives did create one problem though. The programmers had to find a control system which would be intuitive enough and easy enough to use, but would also stay consistent with the change of the camera angle. So, what was the answer? Tank controls.
Oh no.
You say that though, but you played with them for long enough.
Oh no.
You say that though, but you played with them for long enough.
You saw me have a go on Resident Evil 3, OG Resident Evil 3 with the tank controls not so long ago, and there were zombies coming to attack me, and all I could do was
Scream.
open my map like Dora the Explorer. But actually, I couldn't even move. I'm just so out of touch with tank controls. I can't. I love the new controls.
Mm-hmm.
They're just so much more fluid. I mean, don't get me wrong. Back in the day, I just kind of ran with the tank controls because you had to. There was no other choice. But yeah, God.
Yeah, but we've got used to that third person over the shoulder
And that's
perspective,
my
haven't we?
favourite.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
that's
like
what I
that.
do.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? Though, if you got your hands on, I kind of threw you in at the deep end with Resident Evil 3 when we was playing it because he was like against the nemesis. And he was just like, "Oh, why don't you have a go?" It was. Yeah, I think if you tried it again, you'd soon get the hang of it. It's like riding a bike; you don't forget. You'd soon be on it.
I was never really good at riding bikes either. I was the type of person who crashed and then pulled the brake.
Did you have like?
So I usually had X's for eyes by the time I realised I needed to pull my brake.
So you're there, just like on the floor. Your dad comes up. See, I had the brake pressed and it didn't work.
Do you know what? I think if I played tank control games more, I'd get used to them again. But I think I've just been spoiled.
Wow, interesting. So, tank controls became very popular in games through the 90s, with games such as Alone in the Dark, Resident Evil, driving the fixed camera perspective of 3D games into popularity and into the mainstream. But tank controls is the name given to the control system in which the forward direction is given to whichever way the character is facing. So if a character leaves a camera angle by the right of the screen, and the new angle as the character running towards the camera, as long as you are still pressing up, like as the forward direction, the character will continue to walk forward, with left and right solely used to change direction. Tank controls were the easiest and the best solution to the problem caused by a changing camera perspective, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, technological development is one thing, but what was the team actually working towards? Now, I've been looking forward to talking about this bit because, oh man, right, story. So, the players, the gamers, what were they all working with? What would they be playing? Well, Mikami was, as previously mentioned, originally looking to remake or create some kind of spiritual successor to Sweet Home, as per Fujiwara's vision. But with the film's assets being unable to be used, and Mikami using zombie movie influences, Mikami started to develop a new story. But even with all of the inspirations and influences in his head, it seemed crafting a story-driven narrative for the game wasn't really something he felt was important, nor, as it would soon become quite clear, wasn't particularly his forte. Mikami believed you only found strong storytelling in RPG titles. He also believed other genres of games tended to have very loose or flimsy stories. That being said, the developers wanted a strong story to push this game forward, and Mikami created a story which was, to be honest, nothing special. His original story was pretty basic. It consisted of 4 character heroes navigating through a mansion infested by paranormal creatures created by an evil scientist, while the player is looking for a good scientist.
Not a fresco this time.
No, they're just looking to find a good scientist in a mansion with a bad scientist in it.
Right, okay.
And that's about it. So, as time went on and Capcom pushed for something with a little more meat on its bones, Mikami added a little more character development. Now, when I say a little, I really mean a fucking little, because Mikami came up with a few different ideas, and some of these examples are 4 plane crash survivors, an idea which was scrapped, And then he came up with 4 cybernetically enhanced Special Forces soldiers.
Oh, no.
And these were named Beam, Dewey, Gelza, and Jill. How is Jill the only fucking normal name in all of that?
Oh, his girls are like some of Streets of Rage.
Yeah, Galcia and Gelza, yeah. So with development on the story and its characters not progressing how Capcom would have liked.
Just say it reminds me of Dodgeball.
Beam, Dewey, Gelza, and my personal consigliere, Jill. Yeah, it is very dodgeball, isn't it? So, Capcom got some help for Mikami to help try and develop the story a little more. Now, in my personal opinion, as somebody who writes, and so do you, Claire, I think it's always important to give as much possible credit to the writers. Directors of films always get so much credit, but without the writer, they have no foundation to craft such amazing pieces of cinema. And it should really be noted, from what I can tell, it is largely overlooked what a massive part the following gentleman played in the development of Resident Evil and how he ultimately shaped the franchise because of his contribution. That man is Kenichi Iwao, and he was tasked alongside Yasuyuki Saga to take over the story development for its later production cycle. Still working seemingly late into the game's development, Iwao had repurposed and cut some of the original 4 characters and worked to rewrite the story to a more grounded horror story, in keeping with many of Mikami's influences. 2 of the characters were cut, Dewey and Gelza.
I'll not Beam.
Well, we'll get to Beam. First of all, Dewey was originally intended to serve as the game's comic relief, but he...
With a name like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Got that.
Hey, Dewey! What's up, guys? But he was cut seemingly fairly late into production as well.
Really?
Yeah, interestingly though, the name Dewey was still used and given to a different character, Edward Dewey, who was a member of Bravo team, who never actually appeared in the game at all. And the only acknowledgement of his existence is his name in the game's instruction manual. And it's weird because where the rest of the characters listed in the game's manual had character bio, Edward Dewey didn't. There was nothing at all. He was simply listed as a member of Bravo team and nothing else. Not even any kind of concept art was drawn up for him, so nobody knew what this guy was supposed to look like. It was theorised that the hand holding the gun, which Joseph, yeah, he pulls from the gun.
There's no PH on the end of those things.
Joseph! No,
Joseph.
it's Joseph.
Yeah, no, I have heard this about the hand on the gun.
So it's theorised that that was his hand holding the gun. But it was later confirmed, I guess, in a way, unless it was, I don't know. But it was later confirmed that belonged to the pilot in Resident Evil 0, which was Kevin Dooley.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, like, they retconned that, that it was Edward. And then when they made Resident Evil 0, they sort of thought to themselves, well, we need more characters for the story, so we'll have Edward in it now and we'll give him some sort of character and everything, and then we'll just make this other guy the pilot and he's the one that can die,
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I just kind of feel like that's probably the easiest way to sort of give it some sort of... Who else would the hand be? I mean, all the other Bravo team members you don't see Edward. It has to be.
They've all got hands.
Yeah, and the last time I checked when I played it, everyone I met had hands. So, yeah, it's the only answer. So, yeah, I think it was retconned personally, but there you go. The other character cut was Gelza. Gelza was going to be a huge monster of a man, a hardened war veteran with a cyborg eye. It was intended that he would hold up the ceiling for Jill to escape in the infamous Jill sandwich room.
Or Jibble sandwich.
You're almost a Jibble sandwich. But his character was ultimately scrapped due to it feeling too comic book superhero-esque, which kind of makes sense, rather than the more sort of grounded, realistic sort of take they were looking for. Gelzer, although scrapped, it is sometimes considered he was repurposed into Barry due to him kicking the door down to save Jill and his whole seasoned veteran.
I mean, you gotta love Barry, haven't
Yeah, even though he was very young.
No, I tell you what, I do not accept it with 38.
38,
Lies.
nah, he's close to retirement in that.
He gotta be.
Close to retirement. He's in his final years. So, as for the other two characters originally conceived, Beam, what the fuck is that name? Beam.
Please tell me he shot laser beams from his eyes.
Yeah, maybe. He was reworked into Chris Redfield, and Jill became Jill Valentine, obviously. But Jill was actually almost called Jill Morrison, as a nod to Jim Morrison from The Doors. There you go. And the mad scientist villain became Albert Wesker, a traitor/double agent, and a villain amongst their midst, leading them into a trap. So, something I wasn't aware of was that early developers loved the Wesker character so much that they had intended to bring him back for future releases all the way back then.
Oh, yeah.
Even if the game proved to be, like, they weren't sure if it was going to be popular or not.
Yeah.
But they still held out hope that they could bring the characters back. But I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Some of the things we'll talk about later kind of contradict that because they had no idea that this game was going to be successful.
Yeah.
So the idea that, if it's popular, we'll bring him back. They had no intention that it was going to be this big. Yeah. So I think what happened is that it was big, and then they were like, we'll bring Wesker back because I like Wesker. Let's bring him back. Yeah. So that's kind of how I feel about it. The cast of original four characters was also expanded to help tell the story, and I presume create a sense of danger and mortality with the addition of Joseph Forrest, whose purpose was to be killed and for Jill to stand insanely still and scream, Joseph! This team of 5 would be Alpha Team, part of an elite policing task force named STARS, also known as, obviously, Special Tactics and Rescue Service. The rest of the characters would be Bravo Team of Stars, who originally had a larger part in the telling of the story, but this was ultimately cut yet again due to production and time restraints, with many of the members being found dead on your journey throughout the mansion. The only exception to this was Rebecca Chambers, the sole survivor of Stars Bravo Team, who Chris would find during his playthrough of the game. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll get to that. So the characters of Bravo Team were Kenneth Sullivan, the unlucky soul we get to see being eaten in the game's first CG cutscene, which is memorable as fuck, isn't it? Yeah. Forrest Spire, who was the bird food. Yeah. Richard Aiken, who was the snake food. Ouch!
You like him, don't you?
You fucking dick. And the previously mentioned Rebecca Chambers, the 18-year-old young rookie medic, and apparently the fucking helicopter's chief engineer. So what?
Did they think they were going to be able to sell that?
No, I checked the helicopter. What? You, the medic, straight out of school, checked the helicopter for? What are you even looking for? Like, oh.
I mean, they wanted to make the characters young, didn't they? But it kind of lost.
Well, it lost some of its realism, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, these were meant to be like elite. These were like more elite than SWAT or whatever. These were like you called these in when shit was real.
Yeah.
And it's like. Oh yeah, but she's only just finished school. I don't know. I mean, I think if you read it, it actually says that it was made up of like volunteers and stuff like that. And it's like volunteers. It's not a charity shop. This is the police. It's just like, what are you doing?
Oh my god!
I know. And of course, the Bravo team leader Enrico Marini. I liked Enrico. He was cool, and he managed to survive long enough to further the story, to obviously explain that there was a traitor amongst them. What a hero!
Yeah.
The other member of the Bravo team was, of course, Edward, which we've previously discussed. Personally, as harsh as it sounds, I prefer that Bravo team were already dead when you get there. That's a really harsh thing just to deliver as bluntly as I just said it. But, like, I think the story of Bravo team going missing and then finding them dead,
it gives a sense of urgency then, doesn't it, for Bravo team to go in?
Yeah.
And it sets up that whole narrative for
I mean,
it's... happen.
And I think it also helps in the sense that, like, this is why you never heard from them, because they're all dead.
But we do have this thing about they must have shared an office.
Yes.
In RPD.
Mm-hmm.
So why?
Why do Chris and Rebecca barely recognise each other?
Yeah, you'd be crossover, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're on the late shift this week, so I'll have that desk when you're gone.
Yeah, exactly.
But no.
But instead, it's like, oh, you must be Rebecca. Yeah. What, you mean you don't recognise me? What the fuck?
I mean, they would have had nights out, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Staff night out. Team building.
Escape room and...
Yeah. And then it's just like, if I was Rebecca, I'd be like, are you serious? You don't recognise me? You fucking rude piece of shit.
Yeah, you would be thinking that.
You'd be, I'm glad I sprayed you in the eyeballs. Prick. So, I'm dead. He's sort of, he waits to the story's favour, I think.
Yeah, it does.
Because again, it's that thing of like, well, this is why you never heard back from them. This is why they went missing.
And it'd be too many characters.
Yeah.
To juggle.
Yeah.
It's better having a lower amount of main characters, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're getting to know them closely, whereas you've got all these names thrown in the hat. People just aren't going to really remember.
No, you'd have too much going on. And I think it also helps paint the picture of how deadly the enemies are as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, this is what killed them. You've got Richard with the snake bite.
You've got hard bastard Enrico. I know you get shot by.
Yeah, but he was a double hard bastard in, wasn't he?
He was a double
I liked Enrico. So with the characters set up, the enemies were obviously a focus, and paranormal and supernatural enemies became biological mutant weapons. So created by a secret organisation hiding behind a veil, or rather, an umbrella. Which, of course, is how the name Umbrella was conceived. The Umbrella Pharmaceutical Company is an umbrella for their true sinister workings and objective, creating biological weapons through virology. During production, various enemies were explored, and some of the ideas were thrown in the mix. Thrown into the mix was different types of zombies. These included zombie children originally. The idea was quickly dismissed by Mikami, who went on record to say, and I quote, was morally reprehensible to direct a game in which the player could kill a child. Yeah, I don't think I would have been on board with that.
I mean, it's zombie children in Minecraft. I don't mind giving them a boot.
Yeah, but they're just squares, aren't they? They're just blocks,
just squares,
cubes,
and the little shits as well, aren't they? The little.
There you go then.
The little zombies.
Completely justified. Yeah.
But not in Resident Evil.
No, it's just weird. But different clothed zombies are present within the game, such as the green and the white jacketed zombies, and then the naked zombies down in the labs. The naked zombies were designed to help keep the polygon count down for the developers, but they did help to paint a picture of, where they like test subjects which had escaped.
Yeah, that's
I always kind of thought that.
Yeah, because it still have, bearing in mind the time frame, it wouldn't be like the clothes are just, with the decay and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does make sense. Actually.
I always that's how I reasoned it. I always thought, well, they're probably they're the test subjects, and they've got out and they're wandering around.
And they make a funny click.
Yeah, they do. Ooh.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other notable variation of zombies were the dogs, known as Cerberus, but this was not the extent of the enemies the player would come across. We previously mentioned the crows, but other enemies came in the way of a poison. Well, there was the poisonous snakes. The little ones.
Name, Brett?
Dickhead. There was the boss fight with
the snake's called
Yawn.
Apparently,
it is. Yeah, Yawn the snake. Yeah, which is a strange one because they never. I don't remember if it actually even says Yawn. When you get that slide, the first.
I read it online that it was called Yawn, and that wasn't that long ago that I
learned
that.
Yeah, I remember it being called Yawn, but I don't remember ever it saying anything in the original Resident Evil, because you find that photo film where you can scroll through the enemies. Yeah. And I remember the shark being called Neptune,
nice.
Which is a cool name.
Yeah.
But I don't ever remember seeing the snake and that being referred to as Yawn. I remember learning that quite a few years later. I think I actually learned that it was called Yawn when the remake came out.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it was called Yawn. So the giant snake obviously killed Richard, thank God. There were also the giant mutated spiders, which could spit acid, and then there was the giant snakes, which we've also spoke about. But to be fair, they weren't really giant, was they? I mean,
I think they were average.
They were probably about size for a shark, I'd say.
Yeah.
When you drain the water, they weren't that big, were they?
No.
They're probably about the right size for a shark.
Shark or snakes?
I'm talking about the shark.
I was talking about snakes.
No. No, well, the
you meant the ones that follow you on
slither
the
around.
path.
Yeah, they're probably about the right size for a snake. But the sharks also, they were alright.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
they looked like normal size.
Yeah.
There's like a baby one as well, weren't they?
The one in the remake's ginormous. Do you remember?
No, I ain't played the remake for years.
The one in the remake is fucking huge.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like Deep Blue Sea. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah. He's probably about that. Yeah, he's huge. But I'll when I get around to playing it, you'll see what I mean. But that thing is that's a bit more like it really. And then the other one, which was a bit interesting, was the Plant 42. Which
the
was
little Plant 42.
yeah, which was like that was quite interesting that Umbrella would test the virus on plants. I thought that was quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was even bees or wasps, but I must admit I'm not sure if they were actually infected. Did they just have an actual
They just
infestation?
like to follow you out that dormitory.
Yeah, and you could get away from them quite
Yeah,
easily.
you could, yeah.
But were they infected? Or did they just have a problem?
Razzie.
Yeah, just
I mean,
razzie bees.
Like, with the bees or what? What's the razzie anyway, are they? They
I
don't
think-
leave you alone.
No, they have got like serious
Got
temper
attitude
problems,
problem.
haven't they? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it were wasps actually. I think you're right. An interesting monster encounter came in the way of chimeras found in the lab. The
Yes.
chimera was a result of Umbrella's working on the T-virus with flies.
I don't like those.
No, they're
Creep me
gross.
out.
I think they behave more like apes because
Yeah,
they
I
sort of
do.
like hop around,
They
don't
swim
they?
up, like, on the ceiling.
On the
aren't
ceiling.
they?
Yeah, but they're actually like meant to be based on flies, which is weird. And that's why, like, when you kill them, they leave maggots on the floor.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird. But perhaps the most terrifying enemy was the hunters, I think.
Yeah, I don't like those.
No, I don't either. Their introduction as something terrifying came in the form of a cutscene. As you enter the mansion for the second time after exploring the grounds, a CG cutscene from the first perspective shows something moving quickly and leaping towards you. A door is pulled open by a strange green hand, and as it reaches the door you just went through, the cutscene ends, and you see it. A green humanoid reptilian creature with sharp claws which could run and leap at you, closing the gap in no time. These enemies screamed and shrieked, clicking as they walked around. They were incredibly dangerous, and outrunning them was tough, if not impossible, and trying to avoid was just even tougher. Getting around their hulking bodies in narrow corridors was a 50-50 chance of survival. They could also withstand a huge amount of punishment for a regular enemy, and it really meant you went through your ammo and health items depending on how you managed these encounters. All these enemies, including the zombies, were designed to show how the leak and spread of the virus had infected all those in and around the mansion, but also articulate the level of bizarre and deadly experiments Umbrella had been conducting. Their existence all built upon notes, documents and files scattered throughout the game for the player to find. The authors documenting their experiences and encounters with these creatures, and in reading, you discover how they came to be. Ultimately, the fate of the author was left for the reader to deduce. Was the author one of the zombies you'd already come across, or were they dead?
I like that.
But a final boss still needed to be conceived. What was the player working toward? Umbrella's goals were to create the ultimate life form, in this case, the Tyrant. Unveiled at the end of the game, this was the culmination of all the monsters and terrors you had faced. This was the result and main purpose of the T-Virus, a virus created by Umbrella from decades of research to create living weapons. So, the mansion. So we know it was always going to be a mansion because of the sort of how the game was made and what it was originally going to be, and etc. etc. But how did the mansion get its look and its layout? If the player was intended to traverse both the interior and exterior on lower and upper floors in a 3D space, the mansion needed to be created with a coherent floor plan, basically the same as any other architectural project. It was intended that the mansion was a front for an underground lab, and that the researchers lived in the mansion.
Yeah, hence the dormitories and
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So the transition from the mansion setting had to have a reasonable and acceptable means of traversing from one area to another. This also opened up the game to new areas to explore, all the while backtracking to unlock and complete previously inaccessible areas. The story would take players outside of the mansion, a terrifying thought given what you had just fled in the opening sequence of the game and you was hiding from within. The mansion needed a garden, which would lead to the guardhouse. The guardhouse was further dormitory space for employees. It also housed its own laboratory space where spiders and sharks were kept for testing. It would also be the area for you to come across the boss battle, Plant 42. The exterior would also serve the purpose of giving you access to underground tunnels, which would be the pathway to the underground lab. It was originally intended for the garden area to lead to a cemetery, a perfect location for zombie enemies, but this was also cut due to limitations to the game's size at the time. The cemetery did see the light of day, as intended, in the game's remake in 2002. The mansion went through a few designs before Mikami finally settled on what would be the final version. As many as 4 different mansion plans were drawn before Mikami settled on the Spencer mansion we know today. Original ideas and concept art had the mansion looking more grand and ornate, but again, due to limitations, pre-rendered environments were drawn up with as little decoration as possible, but with enough to give rooms character and the feel of an inhabited space. Many of the pre-rendered backgrounds and the appearances of the rooms were inspired by the Overlook Hotel from The Shining, which obviously helped to create the creepy and spooky atmosphere required. So, in terms of the final story, enemies created, the environment set, how would all of this be woven together? So, like many great stories, a great antagonist is what sets the story in motion and calls the protagonists into action. Resident Evil's true antagonists isn't the monsters, but a human, Albert Wesker, the character who was reworked from the mad scientist idea in Mikami's version of the story. Wesker was not only the treacherous leader of STARS, but he was in truth a top researcher with Umbrella, assigned to work on the T-virus at the Mansion laboratory. But this was not the extent of his resume. As revealed by Wesker himself, he was a double agent of sorts. After completing his work on the T-virus, he planned to sell his research to a competing organisation. In order to gather enough information on Umbrella's biological weapons, he purposely leaked the T-virus into the lab, spreading it into the mansion and eventually the surrounding areas. He then released the created biological T-virus weapon creatures, and as mentioned, it spreads through the nearby mountains and the forest area, and Wesker knew it would force the Raccoon City Police Department into action, and STARS would be deployed. Luring his team into the area and to the mansion, Wesker intended their combat with the monsters to be invaluable data to his new employer. So thus the story was set. Chris and Jill, a part of Alpha Team, are thrust into the story to explore the mansion and learn the truth of what happened to Bravo Team and what was going on in the mansion. Chris and Jill's stories varied, and it has caused some confusion over the subsequent years. We've talked about this a few times as to what truly happened at the mansion. It is classed as canon that Chris's playthrough is what actually happened. The only thing with this is that it never explains what happens to Barry, because depending on whether you play as Chris or Jill, this was not a simple matter of changing in difficulty or whatever. This was a difference in events which would transpire. Chris enters the mansion with Jill and Wesker and goes off to investigate after hearing gunfire. When he returns to his comrades, they're missing. Along his journey, he encounters Rebecca, the sole survivor of Bravo Team. Although how the game ends depends on how you play the game and the decisions you make. The canon story is Chris is able to find and free Jill, who has been imprisoned by Wesker. Wesker's killed by the Tyrant after setting it free to kill Chris, who was able to defeat the monster and escape in the STARS Alpha Team helicopter with Jill and Rebecca after making contact with Brad, the pilot who abandoned them at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, thanks, Brad.
Fucking pussy. Again, it is unknown how Barry was able to escape and survive in this game.
Yeah, thanks, Brad.
Fucking pussy. Again, it is unknown how Barry was able to escape and survive in this scenario, as he is never seen or mentioned in the entire of Chris's playthrough.
Bless him.
I know. Barry, where's Barry? That's all like that. You just...
That's it, innit? Like, forgot he's one of his, like, closest work colleagues.
Yeah,
When the chips are down, you'd think, oh, well, I better make sure Barry's okay as well as Jill.
Chris should be moving heaven and earth to find Barry.
I can imagine. I bet they had such a good laugh and stuff in the office. And
Yeah.
Barry's hijinks.
Oh,
and stuff.
loads of hijinks.
Loads of hijinks.
And
Just
tomfoolery.
non-stop. Yeah.
And tomfoolery.
Yeah.
And going out for drinks like proper lads.
Oh, lads.
Lads.
Do you know what, Barry? I'll bet he liked darts as well.
Oh, he's a darts player. He's a darts player. And I bet he even dabbles in bowling.
I bet he does. He's got like the proper shirt and everything.
He has a bowling shirt, no doubt.
does.
And he keeps his bowling ball in a perspex box.
Definitely.
And he has to get that out.
And how can Chris just not even...
Don't give a shit.
Just don't worry about him, does he?
Too busy thinking about punching boulders. Fucking freak. So, it's, but it's never really truly been clarified, like, how Barry got out. If that is the canon event. Because in Jill's playthrough, although really it's somewhat irrelevant in terms of canon and continuity, the story is that Chris is missing, and Jill enters the mansion with Wesker and Barry. So throughout the game, Barry works closely with Jill, assisting in many difficult areas and even a boss fight. Eventually, it's revealed Chris was imprisoned by the traitorous Wesker, and Barry has been working with Wesker under duress, who has threatened his wife and children's lives unless he cooperates. The best ending Jill can achieve is to escape with Chris and Barry, but there is no mention of Rebecca in Jill's playthrough. So, again, canon is that Rebecca survives, but if you play as Jill, we don't know how Rebecca survives. It's a little murky. So although it is considered canon, Barry survives, the only explanation for his survival can be found by playing through the events which happen in Jill's playthrough, but this is a contradiction, as Jill's story isn't considered canon. So again, we're just sort of like going round and round and round.
So if they remade it again, it's like, what? They'd have to do something about that, wouldn't they?
It's like, I think the only answer is you make a game similar to Resident Evil 5, where you have a partner around with you all the time.
Yeah.
And that Krill. That's their team name! Krill! Yes! Krill. Yes, I love these accidents. So Krill go around together, and it all happens. Krill. That's it. They're known as Chris and Jill Krill from now on. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the only way you could really tell the story. Finally, as a true canon story, is if them two went round together.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because I kind of feel like as well, though, Resident Evil 5 isn't the best way to tell a truly scary story.
No,
I mean,
it's fun, but...
oh, it'd be really fun. It'd be incredible. But like, can you imagine playing Resident Evil 2 remake and either playing as Leon or Claire and having the other one round with you all the time?
Yeah, no, it just
It'd
wouldn't work.
do you ready? It just would not be immersive in any way, would it? So yeah, I think that's really the only way to do it, but it would pull away from the game's atmosphere, I think. I don't know. Interesting. Anyway, so ultimately the game reaches its climax with the players reaching the main laboratory space with Wesker waiting for them. He unveils his plans for the Tyrant and the depth of his betrayal before turning the Tyrant onto the player. The Tyrant, in most scenarios, kills Wesker, leaving the player to battle the Tyrant and escape the mansion, the fate of which is dependent on the ending you achieve. So as for the game's events and the characters' stories which transpire through general play, as previously mentioned, the rest of the story is told through discovery of files, memos, and diary entries left by some of the employees who take residence within the mansion. I think one of the most famous entries, not just in this title, but perhaps in all Resident Evil titles, is that of the Keeper's Diary.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah. The author was an employee of Umbrella who documented his time working at the facility and his residence within the mansion. Most importantly, and what it's probably most remembered for, is his recording of his unknowing exposure to the virus. As the diary progresses, the writing becomes erratic, the language becoming more and more basic with poor sentence structure and grammar, designed to show the author's mental decline as the virus takes over, and the entry simply ends with itchy tasty.
Yeah,
It's just,
I like that. It's a good one. That.
It's amazing. I mean, I don't think any file is as entertaining as that,
No, that
because
is one of the best ones.
there's a lot to read in Resident Evil.
Yeah.
But that's the one in it, that one.
That sticks in your mind.
Yeah, and I think they've maybe tried to like replicate that with some in the in later entries, but none have ever done it like that. This was easily one of the most memorable documents in the game, especially because it's found in a bedroom, probably the author's dorm. And after you finish reading the document, a zombie bursts out from the wardrobe behind you, and you're led to believe that this is most likely the diary's author.
Yeah.
Other files help to describe the mansion and its grounds through the perspective of those who worked there, not only to help develop the lore, but also to help with the solution of some of the puzzles, the solutions to which were hidden amongst the text. Some blatantly obvious and others cryptically alluded to a solution, but other purposes were simply to help you navigate the labyrinth of the mansion, the grounds and the underground caves, which ultimately led to the laboratory. These also came in the form of maps. Of the files found in the game, one was left out from the final cut. This was apparently named the Trevor Memoirs. In the game, it was intended for this document to be written by George Trevor, who we would go on to learn in the 2002 remake was the architect of the Spencer Mansion, in which the game is set. The document went on to depict George and his wife Jessica and his daughter Lisa living at the mansion and their involvement in its creation. Ultimately, we have no idea what this document entailed, as the document was cut from the game, and actually quite fairly late into its production, but it is believed it explains how George Trevor was the architect for the mansion, he helped build it, and he and his family met an unfortunate end by the hands of Umbrella, presumably to keep their secrets hidden.
Yeah.
It is said it was cut as late as January 1996,
Wow.
so it was in the game for quite some time. Reasons for this was one of its main writers in the development team, Kazuyuki Saga, requested it be removed from the game as it contradicted some of the other story elements which had since been developed and written. So Saga wrote the story of the Trevors and had written the document for the game, and he kind of felt like it didn't really fit anymore. So, but Kenichi Iwao, however, states that the document offered too much exposition, giving too much away of the story and the lore of the game, and I guess what he was implying was that he wanted to hold on to some of those secrets for like later releases. But I don't really know, again, because this is what we was talking about earlier, because Capcom had not intended the game to be a huge release or success, and a sequel was nowhere near anywhere on anyone's radar. And you know, certainly not at that stage, at that point of development. No one was thinking about sequels, you know. So I just kind of think it's the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think Saga wrote the document, and a combination of Iwao and Mikami turned around and said, you know what, who gives a fuck who built the mansion? No one's really going to care. Let's just sort of like cut it. And it was that sort of like attitude. But then when they were doing the remake and they wanted to pack out more lore, I think they were like, oh, you remember when you made that document about the mansion? That's the perfect time to use that now. And I think it was one of those that it was never purposefully done to hold on to it and use it later, but it just happened to come useful at a later date.
When the story became bigger.
Yeah.
When the story became bigger.
Yeah.
More popular, yeah.
And then they needed to pack out that story in the remake, you know. So I think it's because I think the whole story of the Trevors is you know, it's an unforgettable piece of lore now, and I think adding it into the remake was perfect, you know, because I think it had more of an effect and more of a punch in the remake than it ever would have in the original, I think.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good idea, really. You know, whatever the reasons were, I think it was for the best. So in August 1995, a test version of the game was released at V-Jump Festival. So the V-Jump Festival, this is really easy to say, by the way, the V-Jump Festival, which has now collectively come to be known as Jump Festa. It is a convention made of various manga publications, showcasing art, news of upcoming movies, TV shows, comics, manga. Basically think San Diego or New York Comic Con, but it's in Japan and it's for manga and anime. but it often has Japanese gaming developers in attendance, such as Bandai Namco, or Bandai and Namco as they were formerly known, Square Enix, and of course Capcom. This would usually be a great opportunity to showcase new and upcoming games and allow attendees to get a hands-on experience of some of the early builds. This was essentially advertising for them, as many game publications would get to see these upcoming projects, and this would help to build excitement in the run-up to its release. It was really important for them because this was 1995, before the rise of the internet and all the rest of it. So,
The golden years.
indeed, a better time, a simpler time. The demo also served as an opportunity to get feedback on how to improve the game at this crucial stage before it moved into final development. At V-Jump Festival, I have to say that slowly now, Resident Evil was shown to those in attendance, and many of the game's gameplay elements were present in terms of movement, combat, character models, and many of the rooms' appearances were finished, and how you would expect to see them was pretty much there. The notable differences were the room's order and the enemy placement. Kenneth's bodies found in the room to the right of the main hall, and the door transition loading screens weren't all visible. Room placement wasn't in the correct order, but this was likely done on purpose to show off as much of the game as possible, as the demo helped to showcase zombies, giant spiders, hunters, and even Yawn the giant snake. The snake would appear in what is the room leading to the garden area, far from its usual place of residence. As the player would be confronted by the snake, the demo would end. Showing off these different enemies also helped to demonstrate the ability to aim up and down with your weapon, as it showed developers aiming upwards and shooting a hunter out of the air as it leaps in for attack.
Nice.
Yeah. At this stage, no dialogue was provided, as this was one of the major elements which was still needing to be done during final production. Now, this is where we start talking about that. So, moving on to the famous, or dare I even say infamous, dialogue. Kenichi Iwao, the main writer of the story, was also responsible for the writing of the game's dialogue and cutscenes, including the live-action ones. Voice acting and recording would only be done in a single track, English, for all territories, despite being made by Capcom in Japan, with scripts written in Japanese. The game included subtitles for non-English speaking countries. A Japanese voice acting track was attempted, but this was scrapped as it was deemed too poor a quality to be used. So it was deemed. If the English one was as bad as it was, how bad was the Japanese one? Might I add? Like, Jesus Christ, it must have been fucking shocking. So anyway,
It's iconic in it though.
It is.
When you look back, it's iconic in it though.
It is.
When you look back at it, the dialogue is like.
It's what makes the
amazing.
game.
It is what makes the game.
It's what it is
It wouldn't be as
iconic.
memorable without it.
Definitely not. Definitely not. So another important element to the final presentation of the game was the inclusion of live action cutscenes. These would be used for the beginning intro and the end of the game. This was something Mikami really pushed for, as he felt it was an important element to the cinematic aesthetic he was trying to achieve with the game. The thing is, the voice actors for the characters in the game and the live action actors were two separate things, and any characters in the live action sequences who spoke would be dubbed over by the voice actors, which is just a really weird, strange choice. I don't get it. But the voice and live action actors were recruited from agencies who had English-speaking actors living in Tokyo at the time, and it would seem that Capcom weren't particularly bothered nor overly critical about their options of who they were recruiting for the roles of the characters. That being said and the case for both the voice and the live action. Now, that sounds like I'm being a bit of a dick and having a bit of a jab at the quality of the acting, but this is more to highlight how at the time it was a case of what was possible, not what was preferred. As it has been revealed by Mikami, the actors were chosen solely on availability rather than any professional talent. That was pretty much what he said. So,
Really?
yeah. So, there you go. I'm not being a dick. Mikami is. He was the one who said that. I never said anything about anyone having no talent.
But we love them, don't we?
We do, because they're shit. So, the live-action sequences, specifically the intro, was shot at Tama River in Tokyo, and according to sources, this was particularly distressing for the live-action actress for Jill, which I think her name is Inez.
Yeah.
It's a really strange spelling. If I'm getting that wrong, please tell me, but I think it's Inezh. So, is that Inez? I don't know, who was having a particularly difficult time during filming due to the sheer volume of mosquitoes during the sequence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially when they were doing Joseph's death scene. Apparently she got very stressed out. Mikami has said he does actually have some regret over this incident and actually over the casting of Inez as Jill in general, as she was particularly young at this time, with some sources saying she'd only just left school.
Really? She has a young looking face.
She does, yeah.
Yeah.
And so she apparently had only just left school when she landed the part of Jill. So I don't know if that's entirely true, but some people have, in sources, have said that. So I think we will cover the legacy of the original Resident Evil actors in another episode. I think it's such a vast story; it definitely needs an entire episode of its own, and it is an incredible story as well. Because again, we've already said a couple of times just how important it was to the game. So I think it needs its own episode, and we'll probably cover that another time. But some of the poor acting has been cited down to direction. Pablo Kuntz, the voice actor for Albert Wesker, and Mikami himself explained that because the script was written by a WoW, it was obviously written in Japanese. It was then translated before given to the actors, but the script had not been tweaked in any way after translation to sort of like make it flow more natural and make it localized. They were also being directed by people who didn't even speak English.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So they were actually being directed by, Japanese people who spoke Japanese.
Yeah.
Just, which is always
So it couldn't flow in English as well as it would have done if it had remained in Japanese.
I mean, how could I direct a French person speaking French in a French movie? I don't know what they're saying, and I don't know how they could. I don't know how much emphasis they're putting on what they're saying. It's just an impossible thing to do, I think. So it was always going to be a problem, wasn't it? So Pablo Kuntz further explains during an interview with the YouTube channel Residents of Evil that there was also the difference in storytelling between Japanese and Western territories, with the Japanese often being over-expressive with their dialogue, movements, facial expressions in movies and TV shows, and as such this was requested in the direction of the actors. Lynn Harris, who was the voice actor for Rebecca, was asked to speak slower so players not misunderstand her dialogue, but presumably had she spoken properly it wouldn't have mattered to those countries and players who did speak English, because we would have just understood her fine, but instead she
over-exaggerated.
She notably speaks slow, and
it was very childlike as well, wasn't it?
Which I think the Japanese do that a lot as well, don't they? They do sort of like have those childlike voices in a lot of things. When I've like watched a lot of anime, and if I've watched it in its Japanese language with subtitles, the voices are very childlike. So again, it kind of makes sense. So eventually the intro cutscene in particular was released in various forms depending on where you are and which version of the game you played. Its true unedited version is shown in colour, with images of a dead body as Chris narrates the story. Also, a more gory depiction of Joseph's death is shown, with a bloody Joseph laying dead in the grass. Have you seen it?
I have.
Yeah, it's brutal, isn't it? And also there's shots of the members of STARS shooting the dogs and the actual bullets hitting them, and you can see all the blood spraying out. Yeah, exactly. The intro screen, which then turns to the cast of characters, would show the live action characters and their names being called out.
Amazing.
They're fucking awesome, innit? Their character stats such as age, etc., which is just laughable.
Blood type, you gotta know that.
Yeah, it's important to know their ages. Yeah, definitely. One distinct difference was, which most people will have seen, but in Chris's snippet, the unedited version shows Chris lighting and smoking a cigarette.
Badass.
It's really cool and badass to smoke, Nothing says cool like giving yourself cancer.
You didn't have them lung picture warning things on the packets then?
No.
It was just like, just do it. Don't matter.
Light up, kids, if you want to be cool. Yeah.
YOLO.
So, nothing says, cool like that. So, but it would also explain why Chris had the lighter as his personal item.
Yeah. That makes sense.
The release most of us saw was the intro in black and white, because, it's never as scary when it's in black and white. And many of the gory shots were taken out. Joseph's death scene is mostly off screen, and the blood was removed. The dead body shots of one of the victims during Chris's narration was replaced with newspaper clippings, which I think also kind of worked as well.
Yeah, it did.
It added sort of like a realism to it, that there was newspapers and stuff telling the story. And the voiceover narration was the same, but Chris's intro of him lighting and smoking a cigarette was eventually overlaid with some of the action shots from the general sequence of the intro. Other than that, everything else remained the same. These changes were due to the serious clampdown on video game and cartoon violence, which many countries were seeing at the time, especially the US. For example, I remember reading somewhere that this clampdown became really brutal and strict, and an example of this was in the 90s Spider-Man animated series, because I read somewhere that in that, Spider-Man does not throw a single punch throughout all of the seasons.
What did he do then?
He literally just either swings into people, pulls things over onto people, but he never actually throws a single punch. Without rewatching it, I don't know how true that is, but I must admit I don't ever really remember him, because I loved that cartoon as a kid. But yeah, I don't remember it. So anyway. Either way, whether these performances would light the world on fire or nab the actors any kind of accolade was totally irrelevant and inconsequential. In 1996, these performances, the dialogue, all added to the charm of something which would eventually stand the test of time and lay a foundation for an enduring legacy, something many other games of its time could not replicate, regardless of whether they had more production value or not. So, with the release on the horizon, preparations to release the game known as Biohazard in Japan began, but it had ran into some unexpected marketing issues over here in the West. It was identified that marketing the game under the name Biohazard could be a problem, and there was concern it would be a original enough title to get people's attentions. So, that it wouldn't be original enough a title to get people's attention, sorry. In and around that time, many other media entities with the name Biohazard, or the word Biohazard in its title, existed on the market, such as games. I think there was one called Biohazard Battle, which was a Mega Drive or Genesis game. But I think the biggest concern for them was, at the time, there was an American metal band known as Biohazard, and that was like their biggest, they were quite big apparently,
Right.
And I think that was their biggest hurdle, was holy shit, when people are just going to think of them instead of this.
Association.
Yeah. So with that, Capcom began looking for a title for the Western market to help distance itself from everything else in the media scope at the time with names related to Biohazard. So Capcom ran an internal competition in search for a new name for the game, and I think it was something like around 1 to 200 entrants that were submitted, and out of those, the name Resident Evil was chosen. So the reasons for it being that I don't really need any explanation, I'm sure, but it was selected because the events take place in a residential setting, and it's about the evil within the residential setting, Resident Evil. It's kind of obvious, but anyway. So, but can you imagine who the guy is who come up with that? I wonder if he's actually got any royalties.
Yeah.
He just enters this competition and then that's it. That's the end of it. It's just a bit of fun. Hi guys, we're just going to do a competition. Just a bit of fun. Can you come up and?
I also want to know what the other names were.
Oh, I'd love to see the list of other names.
Yeah, I would. I bet there's some real good ones.
I bet there was some awesome batshit ones as well. I bet there's some real.
The Adventures of Krill.
Yeah, the life and times of Krill. Yeah, that'd be fucking ace if it was. Gelzer Goes West. There's some real good ones. I want to know. I'm going to try and find them. So, yeah, you can only imagine what it was like in the office when they put that out there as a competition. But I'd love to know if the guy who did it actually found out, he could have been the caretaker for all we know.
Yeah.
They're just just come over here, just give us a name. Resident Evil, yeah, that'll do. And then they use it, and then he knows nothing about games. He just works in the office as the caretaker, and all the while, Capcom are making millions and billions off that name. I wonder if he knows. I'm gonna find him. So, but yeah, Resident Evil was the clear winner, and it made an impression on the higher ups at Capcom. So, but this being the case, there was one person who was not impressed, and didn't particularly like it, which was Chris Kramer, who was the director of communications at Capcom at that time. And in an interview with the gaming website Games Radar, when asked about the name change, this was his response, and I quote, "I thought it was super cheesy. Can't remember what I felt was a better alternative, probably something stupid about zombies, but the rest of the marketing crew loved it and were ultimately able to convince Capcom Japan and Mikami-san that the name fit." So, I mean, if
you can't come up with anything if you can't come up with anything else, then
yeah, that's it. I mean, you ain't got a right to complain, have you?
Yeah.
I mean, if he'd had his way, what would we have had? Like Zombie House, also. Yeah, it would have been Zombie House, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. Now I say it out loud, I'm like, yeah, it would have been Zombie House.
It would.
Idiot. So, in the build-up to the game's release, Capcom released demo versions of the game. In Japan, this was known as Biohazard Trial Edition and was released at the back end of 1995. This version of the game was a 15-minute time-limited demo. The timer for this would be on the screen, and when 15 minutes would have elapsed, the message "to be continued" would be shown and the game would end. This trial version also differed slightly to the final version of the release. Some of these differences include some bloody writing on the wall, and a bloody handprint running down it. This could be found on the wall leading to the room where you get the second floor map, you know, where you light the fire. Yes. So that wall there, there's some like bloody writing on the wall, and it says the writing's awesome. It actually says, "It hurts to breathe. Someone end this suffering."
Oh, I like that.
Why not end? Why would you take it out?
No, and that's really good.
It's good, isn't it? You know, it really sets the tone. You know, like you get all the files and the memos, and you read all those kind of things. And we've talked about the itchy, tasty journal note and all the rest of it. But that's fucking cool.
Yeah, it is.
That should have stayed in, man. So various other differences with the demo to the game. You know, some were big and some were small, but there was an inability to combine bullets, and each clip took its own inventory slot.
Oh,
can you imagine that? Fucking hell.
Chris's
yeah, with only 6 slots. Nah, that would have been. It would have been impossible.
That would be torture, wouldn't it?
It'd be impossible. It genuinely would be impossible. You'd be backtracking to the crate constantly. Yeah. You could climb stairs without the need for pressing the action button, so you could just walk up. That was pretty cool. Yeah. Some changes to the placement of items, such as crest locations and the sword key, so they were found in different places. And there were some slight graphical and appearance changes, most notably to the appearance of the item box in the safe room. I think in the trial version it looks like a wooden box, rather than like the metal.
Oh, I like the crate.
Yeah, and that noise.
Yeah.
And some doors also had their designs changed. In May 1996, UK retailer HMV provided a demo disc of Resident Evil with copies of Street Fighter Alpha, Warrior's Dreams. The demo was labelled a promotional exchange disc, and if you returned the demo for the full release of the game at HMV, it gave you a £5 discount.
And £5 in that day could, like, buy you a house.
Buy you a house, buy you a car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you could go far with £5 back then. How many fucking Freddos could you buy with £5, by the way? And chomps.
Oh, you'd be proper stocked up.
Yeah, you would. You'd be the envy of every playground. So, oddly, the promotion ran from June the 28th to September the 1st, even though it wasn't released in Europe until August. So the fact that they ran it from June was a weird one, because you couldn't redeem it because the game went out. But maybe they put a window on it in case the release date changed and it was brought forward, maybe. An individual and independent version of the demo was also released in Germany, which came in censored and uncensored versions of the game. This was probably helped to get it to market, because Germany games had really strict game certification.
I remember that again.
Yeah, there was
younger. There's something to do with the German market.
There's a few. I think Australia's quite bad as well. You know, if anyone happens to listen from Australia, you can let us know if that's true. But I think that they do have quite strict gaming certifications. There's quite a few games don't make it to those markets, and I think that was probably one of the reasons why it had this like censored and uncensored versions of the game. So the time was upon us, and on March 22nd, 1996, in Japan, Biohazard was released, and followed by a North American release on April 1st under the name Resident Evil. Us here in the UK and the rest of Europe had to wait another 4 months before we would get to play this game. 4 months. Such was the state of being a gamer in the UK and Europe at this time.
It was like that with everything, though, wasn't it? You always had to wait longer.
Ages. We had to.
Films,
Yeah,
everything.
exactly. And this is exactly what I was just about to say as well. Like, I don't think you'll ever really be able to articulate to anybody in the US just how lucky they were at that time when they just got games months and months and months.
Yeah.
So I think there was a massive gap between Resident Evil 0, their release, and ours. You know, to the point where I actually imported a copy because I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't. I imported a version, and there was a disc on the GameCube called the Freeloader, and that could play imported games.
Really, right.
So you put that in first, it booted something up like a piece of software, which would then essentially make the GameCube like region free.
Yeah.
And then you could put your US copy of the game in. But I was that desperate to play the game that I just couldn't wait. I think it was, I might be wrong, I'll have to have a look at it. I'm just talking off the top of my head right now, but I think the release of Zero, well, it certainly felt like a fucking year anyway.
Yeah.
It was ages. It was a really long time. So, yeah, I've completely gone off script now, and like I've probably just said half of what I was about to read out anyway. So I think a lot of the time there was a big gap because back then there was many issues with distribution, licensing, copyright. Companies had different rights and copyrights, you know, so a label here would own the rights to something where it would be a different company in another territory. Independent age rating was also a factor with the process for certification in different countries being different and sometimes longer. I mean, it's still not uncommon for some games to simply not be released in some countries due to stricter age rating certification, or the notion that the game, you know, would not appeal to the market. You know, that still happens now, like we've just said. You know, so... But yeah, it was so bad back then. It's good now that most things, even before things became digital like they are now mostly, you know, things were generally a worldwide release, weren't they?
Yeah.
You know, most things came out within the same week at least. You know, you're talking days apart really. But anyway, Capcom finally got Resident Evil to us in Europe on August the 16th, 1996, and the zombie outbreak had gone global. And this was only the beginning. And it's with this where we'll end this episode, and we'll pick back up next time, going straight into the actual physical copy of the game in our hands, and talking about the game, and basically how this game changed everything.
Yes.
Forever.
Yes.
Forever.
The excitement.
Indeed.
When I first played it.
I know, and we'll talk all about that. I'm really excited to talk about that as well. So, so this is it. That's episode 1 done. We'll try and get episode 2 out as quickly as we can. Just bear with us because this isn't like our full-time job. We've got like busy lives, families. I'm a secret agent. Claire sells cars. We're busy people, so like just bear with us. But yeah, we'll try and get the next episode out as quickly as we can. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've found it interesting enough that you want to hear what happens next, because we've got a lot to cover in the next one. Honestly, this is boom. Look, this is it here.
That is a lot. Yeah.
There is, and there's loads of stuff from all the different releases that they've done of the game, things which were cut from the game. Some really, really interesting stuff. Like, yeah, I can't wait. Can't wait for that. So, yeah, we'll get into that as soon as we can. But thank you very much, everybody. So, I'm going to say goodbye. Claire's going to say bye.
Bye. Bye.
There we go. You see? I told you she would. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.